consumer movement, which has many shared goals with the initiative. I'd like to clarify what it means to destroy a video game. The second slide. When we say a game has been destroyed, what we mean is a publisher has permanently disabled all copies of it that have been sold so no one can ever play them again. It would be like removing every single copy of a book or film in existence, effectively erasing it from the culture. The way this practice works is first a publisher sells a copy of a video game. However, it has been designed so that it must connect to the publisher in order to function. This acts as a potential kill switch. The customer is also given no information when the game will stop working, even though the publisher has decided to assume that responsibility. Then, after an undisclosed length of time, the publisher disables all existing copies of the game, but keeps the customer's money. The publisher also enacts countermeasures to ensure repairing the game. To ensure repairing the game is almost impossible, even for experienced software professionals. From this point onward, no customer can ever run the purchase again. Besides destroying the game, this practice is also subverting customer expectations. Most video games can work indefinitely, which has been the customer standard for half a century, including ones that connect to the internet.
What do you mean by this?
Ultimately, a small number of video games operate as subscription services, but those inform the customer exactly when their access ends at the time of payment. The games we're referring to do no such thing. It's a bit of miscommunication. They almost always contain terms stating they can end at any time for any reason. What this means is customers have no real protections when they buy games like these. They are unable to keep them and they are not informed when they will end. This behavior would be outrageous in other industries. If you bought a book in a store, the publisher cannot come into your home and take back your book at will. If you bought an insurance policy, you would be informed when that policy...
Right, on some fucking Fahrenheit 451 type shit. So if y'all don't want to have your things taken away, make sure you have financial security. And make sure you click that link in the description. It can help you get out of any student loan debt, medical bills, or credit card debt that you all may have. Click that link down below.
Good job, my brother. We rocking with you.
And let me know how you feel about this topic, man. If video games get taken away, I'm going to have an issue.
Ends. Not that the seller could end it at any time for any reason, but still keep your money. The games being sold this way are operating similar to scams. Publishers know customers expect video games to last, so they sell these in the same way as ones that can work forever, as a one-time purchase with no expiry date, then price them the same. Publishers know that if customers were informed exactly when they plan to disable their games, that would reduce sales, since the longevity of a game affects how much customers are willing to pay. The industry is trying to have it both ways, finding ways to say they're selling you a game that they're not selling you. This creates confusion for everyone involved and is part of why it's taking customers so long to get exposure on this practice. The legality is also unsettled. Earlier, members of Parliament assisted us in asking questions to the EU Commission about how legal the terms and game license agreements were, especially being able to terminate them at any time for any reason. The Commission stated Directive 93/13 EEC prohibits unfair terms causing a significant imbalance in the parties' rights and obligations to the detriment of consumers. The Commission also recommended consumers file complaints with businesses across member states through the European Consumer Centers Network. In 2024, we had volunteers across the majority of EU countries submitting complaints against the French company Ubisoft for disabling the game The Crew. The responses we received from the ECC network were extremely inconsistent. Some officials said there was nothing they could do. Others said the company was required to run the game indefinitely, which is unrealistic. But the majority stated there was no clear regulation on this practice. We were independently able to get thousands of complaints submitted to consumer agencies in France and Germany, but there still has been no decision on them on the legality either. To the best of our knowledge, no one in the EU has ever been compensated for this and hundreds of other titles.
What?
In short, governments in EU countries are not sure how to handle this situation, and customers are overwhelmingly not being compensated for the loss of their purchases. It is an ideal situation for clear regulation. This is not a new practice. It started approximately 2005 and began negatively impacting customers for them around 2010 onward. However, it often affects a minority of customers whose complaints can get lost in the system. It wasn't until a large case affecting millions that any attempts to get government attention were possible, and there still is no answer. The EU Commission says this must be handled on a case-by-case basis, but this practice is extremely widespread. Future slides. We have formed an amateur study examining over 1,100 video games that require a connection to the publisher. The majority of these have been deliberately disabled by the publisher, with many of the rest still at risk of being destroyed. Under the strictest interpretation of what it means to disable a game, the study found that out of over 400 titles, publishers disable a customer's purchase 93.5% of the time when ending support. This business practice is responsible for more destruction to the medium than anything else by an enormous margin. There is also a strong correlation between this practice and the size of the publisher, as most small studios do not engage in it, as it requires far more resources, work, and liability than they can handle. So even though this impacts a minority of games, it disproportionately affects customers.
Bro, only 4% of publishers let customers keep their game with multiplayer mode. And if it's just a full game, just 2% more at 6%. That's crazy. Like, I know a lot of y'all, bruh, have been playing something like 2K or Madden, and you just be like, dang, what happened? It's been like 3 years, and now I can't even play online no more. And that's annoying, because there's certain games in these categories that were better the years prior. So just 2K17, 2K16, if y'all know, y'all know. So what I'm saying is, why are these publishers allowed to take all of our money, continue to potentially collect microtransactions all throughout this time in their games if they're available, and still deactivate it just because of what, server cost? Okay. Do you really think they're not making enough bread back?
The largest offenders. From sales figures, it impacts tens of millions of customers minimum in the EU. This impacts developers as well. This may seem obvious, but based on interviews and feedback, we found the majority of game developers do not support having games they've worked on destroyed. They can spend years of their lives creating them, but they are often not the ones making these business decisions, and sometimes even sign non-disclosure agreements so they cannot voice their opinion on the matter. The main point I hope that does not get lost in this hearing is this initiative welcomes any solution that will solve the problem of video games being destroyed on this scale. We want this to be as easy and as practical as possible for all parties involved, and are very open to how that is achieved. We are not even asking publishers to change their business or monetization models, only that once they end support, they do so in a responsible way. Our only goal is to prohibit this destructive practice and thus obtain basic protections for consumers and the medium as a whole.
Brother, we rocking with you.
I'd like to add a little bit on the economic aspect. Again, when planned for from the beginning, the cost can be very small. It's mostly about when it's undoing that's more of a cost related. Earlier the game Concord was mentioned. That's actually an excellent example, because it's publicly stated that at least 370 million euros were spent developing that game, and it did not include an end-of-life plan like what we're seeking. Most of the cost for developing games tends to come from other areas like art assets or marketing. This is just one element out of hundreds that already go into making a game. The other thing is sometimes industry costs or estimates of how much this would cost can be faulty, because they're expecting the game they're asking for to have every last feature it did while it was being supported. And many of those can be retired and don't even make sense for a game that's no longer being supported, like administration or anti-cheat measures or account management or things like that. So that can there can be hundreds, known as microservices, associated with these that can be disabled, and the customer still has the core game. So that should be taken into account when figuring out the potential cost. And it might have been mentioned earlier, but we also want to emphasize the companies have been paid already once for the working game, so that should be factored into the budgeting. There were some other points mentioned on the right to repair, whether we need it and how long a product should work. With right to repair, that's a little bit different issue. Well, that's certainly welcome, having the right to that. As I mentioned in my presentation, there are deliberate countermeasures to prevent repair that it's almost a small miracle when it does happen from extremely experienced software professionals for resurrecting a game. However, if there were repair instructions, that would be very welcome. I think we would even consider that a viable alternative to what we're asking, if it was practical to resurrect the game that way. And for how long it should work, it's kind of again, the customer standard is indefinitely, as long as they keep the game in good working order on their end. And we're not trying to hold any publishers responsible for updates that break things that wasn't their doing. So how long they choose to support it, we're completely open to. I mean, I think there's already existing EU regulations on that, but I mean, they, as far as we're concerned, they could end support the next day, but as long as the game isn't destroyed, we would find that acceptable. And the last point on the, for doing this through the existing, just doing this through the courts, through the legal action, that still doesn't get to the heart of the matter of the game itself being destroyed. We're not really refunds and compensation. Those are a secondary measure that when the game itself can't be reinstated, we just want the game preserved. So doing it through the existing framework doesn't quite get us there necessarily.
As y'all can see in this video, they are trying to get rid of video games, so I would just definitely say stay aware, stay safe. I didn't even know this was a thing, a conversation at hand, but I knew it should have been when I would get on 2K and it would be disabled, because why? I done spent $300-400 on VC, bruh. I need my accounts. The hell? But like I said, click that link in the description down below. Make sure to click that link in the description. I know y'all are above 20 and I know y'all are below 50, so you probably got a little bit of debt, whether it be student loan debt, credit card debt, or medical bills. No obligation, completely free. Click that link in the description down below. Figure out what options may be available for you today.
Good job, my brother. We rocking with you.
But other than that, let me know how y'all feel about the topic of this video. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe.